Welcome to the Earth Keepers podcast. This podcast is for people who seek new and better ways to love and care for the earth. It's a podcast for anyone who is deeply concerned about the harm being done to the environment on a local and global level. It's a podcast that builds community and connection between people of like heart and mind, people who believe that earth care should be integrated into every aspect of life, and for many in the Earth Keepers community, that includes our spiritual lives. In this episode, we'll be talking with Tanya Machabeli, director of the Nehemiah Project in Ukraine. Tanya is one of the courageous Ukrainians helping to provide shelter, food, and medical care to those who have been displaced by Russian aggression. Speaking to us from her war-torn country, she explains that some of the most profound costs of the war in Ukraine have to do with damage to the land itself, because the very identity of Ukrainian people is so tied to the land. Tanya insists, though, that despite the current conflict, this connection between land and identity will endure, as it has endured other crises in Ukraine's history.
Our land is our roots. If to compare us to the trees, if you will take a tree with their roots and replant it somewhere, this tree will be weak. But we who are living here in Ukrainian, and we are rooted deeply into our land. And it doesn't matter that we had Holocaust, communist regime, Second World War, even going back to the First World War, the aim number one for families was to get a piece of land and to work on it, to cultivate it, to see the products of your hands after cultivation, after growing the crops, flowers, orchards, vineyards. It just brings joy to us all.
Welcome, friends, to the Earth Keepers podcast. Well, welcome, friends. We have an interesting episode today. We'll be talking to a friend in Ukraine. And to do that, I've invited my friend Lisa to co-host with me because, in fact, Lisa is the one who introduced me to Tanya. I met Tanya in the Czech Republic a few years ago, and Lisa is a good friend. Lisa and I know each other from working as colleagues in Northwest University's International Community Development Program. So, Lisa, welcome. How are you feeling about co-hosting today?
It's so good to be here, and really so great to be able to present Tanya to you and to all of your listeners. I first met Tanya Machabeli when I was 18, and when she heard I was learning Russian, she invited me to come and live with her. Tanya and her family adopted me, and Tanya taught me, put me to work, served as a cultural broker for me. She was helping me process what was new and learn how to function in Ukraine. And then through the years, as we kept in touch, Tanya's international work kept developing, and there were times I could return the favor and help her process the intricacies of working with Americans. Now, Tanya and her husband Vasiko run Nehemiah Ukraine, and they've really poured everything they have into the work of community development, education, and now refugee assistance. Two things to know about Tanya. In the 24 years I have known her, she's never turned down an opportunity to organize something wonderful for her community. I will also say she's absolutely fearless, which is a quality we've all recently come to appreciate about Ukrainians. So, Tanya, let me start by asking you to tell us about your work right now.
First of all, greetings to everybody from Ukraine, from Uzhgorod. It's right on the Slovakian border, our city, and it's about 500 meters right now from me, Slovakia, but I'm in Ukraine. Sitting in the center where we receive not refugees, but we call it internally displaced people. People who are fleeing from the war, from the active war zones, and they come now to the safest place, which is Transcarpathia or Zakarpattia, we call. It's an area where I grew up and where I live right now. So we are serving these internally displaced people. We serve different ways. We give them free accommodation, we give them free food, medical supplies, psychological, social services we provide for them. We are finding places for them abroad in different countries, do evacuation. We also receive a lot of humanitarian aid from abroad, from different donors, organizations, private people, and send these aid to the hot areas we call, like war, where is war right now. We also try to rescue children in the areas where is a war and persuade people to leave these areas. Many people are calling even me from those areas. They know my phone number, and I'm just begging them to leave their places because they still don't believe that war will come into their houses, but it's coming. So we do all these things.
I want to follow up actually on that. You're saying we ought not to use that word refugee, which is actually a media word. We hear it all the time. You're saying internally displaced. What's important about using that other term to describe the folks that you're serving?
So internally displaced, these are people who are moving inside the country when there is a disaster, when there is a war situation. So they don't want to leave their country, but they move to the safer area where is no disaster, where is no war. Those people who move out of the country, they are refugees. So this is the difference. When you move inside the country, so you're internally displaced. When you move into another country, then you're a refugee.
What percentage of the people who come to you end up being refugees?
I would say 50-50. But some people stay with us for 3 days, some for 1 week, some for a month, and then they decide to move into another country. They see that there is a big need, that our region cannot accept all people, cannot accommodate, and we don't have enough of resources. So they decide then to move to another country. Also, many people never traveled abroad, and especially from the east part of Ukraine. They have very different mentality as us here on the west part. So when they see that we are, who live in the west part of Ukraine, we are okay, we are normal people, we are not so-called Bandera, Nazis, because they still have this fear because of the propaganda that it's coming from Russia. And then we talk to them, persuade them, and then they are ready to move to another countries. It's always very sad for them to leave Ukraine, always very sad to move to another country, but there is no other way right now.
You're telling us about people who become refugees as they leave the country. They go to resettle elsewhere. I am guessing that given the nature of Ukrainians' relationship to the land, that many of those people aren't moving permanently, that probably you're going to see a great influx of people returning when they're able. Is that your read of the situation?
Yes, I would say yes. And many even are returning now. When they've seen that some places are deoccupied, they just returning back. They don't see themselves in other countries. Many are doing it. And we were known as country who were going abroad to Europe or even Russia to work, earn money, and come back and again invest into houses, land, children. So that's who we are. So I don't think it will be permanently moving abroad. But yes, some people will stay abroad for sure. But I believe that the biggest amount of those who moved, who are refugees now, they will come back.
So, Tanya, I'm really interested in something you had said to me earlier, and that was there are many people who put themselves at risk by staying in the hot zones, as you call them, because they just don't want to believe that anything like this could happen. There's a certain reality that doesn't sink in. And that was true for you as well. I'm just curious if you could comment on that a bit.
So, you never believe that something wrong can happen with you. You never believe that war can happen. I think it's not in the human mind. Evil, that it will occur with you. And I remember when there was a war in Georgia or Chechnya or somewhere else in Syria, I was always thinking that Ukraine is the safest place of all places because we are a peaceful country. We don't do any harm to anybody. It's a breadbasket for the whole world. And when everybody was telling me, starting from November 2021, that it can happen, that Russia can invade, I was like, no. How? No. Why? It's impossible. And then even when all the American embassies and all other embassies started to leave Kyiv, We were like, what you are doing? It's nothing would happen. I remember even now our president, everybody, they worried about the economy of the country, that it will go down, all investments will go away, how we will survive, and we never thought about the bombing, never thought that somebody would start go with the tanks on our streets, or about the raping. It was not even in our mind. Although I used to work with the kids who've been actually damaged by Russians and Chechens in Georgia war, and I really knew, I heard the stories, what can happen. And 2014, when we had this first war, it was hidden invasion by Russians. It was hidden. World didn't know that. It was And when a first foster family came to our place, there was a mother, actually older sister with 8 sisters, younger sisters, and she was a caregiver. She came and she said that she went through several blog posts, and there were Chechen people and Cossacks, Russian Cossacks. I was like, oh no, like a flashback in my memory, like stories from the children who've been raped in the Georgian war in Abkhazia. I said, and I wrote on the Facebook, please, everybody, mothers and kids, come to the west part of Ukraine. You should leave that place. But I never thought that big invasion would happen. Never. From Belarus, Crimea, Chernihiv, other places, no. It was not in my mind at all.
So, with all of the human suffering that we hear about in the media, one of the larger stories about Ukraine that I think is not being heard is really the story of the land itself. I mean, how has war, as you see it, been impacting the land, the soil, the air, the ecology of Ukraine? Because it's also being attacked.
Of course. Of course. When evil comes, it destroys everything. Not just humans, but all nature. And of course, the land. And if you know story about Chernobyl, 1986, it was 26th of April when the Chernobyl accident happened. It was exploded and it influenced the whole Europe. So many been sick. I was sick. So that time I was a teenager. And now Chernobyl area for the first time being occupied by the Russians, and they went with the equipment, military equipments, with the tanks through the Red Forest, the place that should not be touched by anybody. If you will bring up the dust and even forest by itself, if you'll even touch it, again, these dust will come up and will go to different places, and it's a big radiation. But they did it. We don't know the results of that. I think we will find out, but I know many of them already dead. And the head of this brigade, or this department of that army is also dead already because of radiation. And another thing, Zaporozhye nuclear station, like energy station, it is 4 times bigger than Chernobyl. And it's occupied by Russian army. And we just recently seen the video how 2 rockets were flying over this Zaporozhye nuclear station and just can hit accidentally. And actually, they already damaged some things there at the nuclear station. It was good that it was not this power unit, but somewhere close. So imagine what can happen. So I remember some ladies invited me to talk in front of United Nations, and it was more than a month ago, before other women. And I told them at that time it was 26 Ukrainian children who've been killed in the war. And I said about this Zaporozhye nuclear station, it will kill, of course, many other kids in Europe, but it will damage the land for many, many centuries. Not just Ukraine, but the whole Europe. And I think the earth. And that what this radiation can do. It's a long term. It's a long term. I don't know how many Hiroshima and Nagasaki it is, but it's many. And you don't need nuclear weapon. Just this. One missile can hit, and that's the end of our safety.
I just want to follow up there, because your point about the costs of war, the impact on the land, are not limited just to Ukraine. I mean,
yes.
They could have actually really widespread implications. And I recall a phrase you used a little bit earlier about how you called Ukraine the breadbasket.
Yes.
And I think that clearly has implications as well. I mean, what do you see happening in terms of productivity of the land, of the ability of people to raise food for export of themselves?
So right now it's very difficult to sow seeds, to plant. And, Ukraine is biggest in agriculture. 18% of wheat and sunflower oil, and remember maybe 17, is exported from Ukraine into other countries. Now our seaports are blocked, and a lot of grains is being stolen by the Russian army. A lot of mines on the fields where wheat should grow and all other crops. I don't know what happened next year. It, of course, will influence the famine all over the world, especially in Africa, in other countries where they don't produce these types of crops. So it will influence, of course.
Tanya, one of the things that most struck me about Ukraine when I first moved there was this connection to the land, and even the way it was expressed in your family, going to dacha, a pride in the produce and the seasonality of it and beauty of it. And I think about that land in connection with you. Clearly, the story of the land is bound up with the stories of the people who love the land and who have lived in close connection to it. How would you describe the connection between the people of Ukraine and their land?
Our land is our roots. If to compare us to the trees, if you will take a tree with their roots and replant it somewhere, this tree will be weak. But we who are living here in Ukraine, Ukrainian, and we are rooted deeply into our land. And it doesn't matter that we had Holocaust, communist regime, Second World War, even going back to the First World War, the aim number one for families was to get a piece of land and to work on it, to cultivate it, to see the products of your hands after cultivation, about the growing the crops, flowers, orchards, vineyards. It just brings joy to us all. And during Soviet time, we were not able to own the land. My grandfather, he was an orphan, and his uncle took him as a foster child, adopted him actually into the family. And they had a lot of land. But when the Soviets came, they took it away and left just a piece of land for them. And I remember my grandfather taking care so well. It was the most valuable thing that they had, their own property. And I remember when he was growing grass for the cows, for the animals, they didn't allow us kids to run on these new grass. And I wanted so much to go and run around, but no, don't step on it. And then these gardens always clean, nice, beautiful, all these plants that they were growing. My grandmother, it's just amazing. From early in the morning till late at night, my memories about village, about the farm, about going even taking care of the hay, potatoes, carrots, beets, and so on and so on. We were growing with that, and we just loved it. It's just amazing. But yes, during Soviet time, we were not allowed to have the land. Those who lived in the cities, they just could work at the plants, factories. And when these chants happened, everybody got a piece of this property. It was on the mountains. We still have dacha. And we all, for us, to have some kind of rest, resort, is to go to our dachas and work there. Until today, all elderly people, that's their rest for them, to go to and work on their land. That's how we value it.
You have to wonder if, when this is over, and we have to believe it will be over, if that sort of healing quality of the land isn't going to be even more important, that people will need to come back to their places, the places which own them and which they own on a soul level. You have to wonder if it's in the working and restoration of the land that a lot of the general healing for the country is going to happen.
Absolutely. And you know what happened? We had people living with us, and they are from the village, which was very damaged, next to Kiev. And when they heard that their village is being deoccupied, released, right after that, they just ran back, but we still worry about them. And do you know why did they go there? To plant potatoes, because they must do that because they have some types of potatoes that if they will not plant, they will lose it. So that's what they've done. They went back. And I have friends from Kherson area, and they called me and they started to ask me to find for them bulletproof vests. And you know for what? Because they have to plant the seeds, and they have to sit on the tractors and have helmets and bulletproof vests to go and to sow, to plant. Just unbelievable.
Tanya, how far back does this connection to the land go in your history?
We are learning now, our history. They have stolen our history during Soviet times. We were not allowed to learn about the truth. And just recently, we started to learn that there was such a culture about cultivation of the land, and what we are growing today still people used to grow 2,000, 4,000 years before Christ. Imagine. We call it Tripilska culture. That's how far it goes. That's what we are finding out today, what archaeologists are finding out, and actually happened. And it was really developed civilization that time, even before Christ. So it is so far.
You're making me think about the things that the Earthkeepers community has been learning from our indigenous friends who talk about the crisis, the trauma that comes from being separated from land, especially when your life has been so intricately connected with it. And so, I'm hearing the stories you're telling, and even hearing that disconnection, intentional disconnection of a people from their place is an act of war itself. It's a weapon. They're weaponizing that connection in a way. I'm wondering if you've seen this. Have you seen people who are experiencing any sorts of trauma as they have to leave the place that they're not even sure they can go back to?
Oh, yes. Yes, absolutely. That's why they don't want to live in the country. Many of them want to stay here. They stay here in Ukraine. That's our country. We don't want to leave. And it's a trauma. And that's what they used to do during the Soviet regime. We call it derooted. To replace them from our area, they moved people to Siberia, or from Crimea, Tatars. They moved them to Kazakhstan. Also Ukrainians, many were sent to Kazakhstan, other places. It was for purpose that they would forget their own land. But still all people came back. Anyway, most of the people came back. And those who are staying there, something is happening with them. It's easy to brainwash them. It's easy to manipulate them if they are not rooted to their own history, culture. It's easy to do what the regime or dictatorship wants. And especially when people been traumatized. Yeah, it's big trauma. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Tanya, it's become clear that dependence on foreign petrofuels has paved the way for the situation that Ukraine is in now. What are your thoughts around this issue? What are Ukrainians doing to challenge petrofuel dependence?
Oh, what Ukrainians are doing now, petrol fuel. We are all trying to use alternative energy. If you'll come to Ukraine, you will see these solar panels everywhere. And I will think it will be more and more and more. Also, for example, we try not to use gas for heating. So we're going back to, of course, wood. It's also not good to cut our forests, but we have replanted to plant new and new forests, and here, especially in Carpathian Mountains, other places. We all are looking for the alternatives. And I think when we will win the war, that will be the priority for our country, and especially with the fossil fuel. So that we need to find the alternative for, I don't know, I've heard about this hydro fuel. It's a new thing. Maybe we will be the first one in the world, I hope, to develop something like that.
I think about all the money that is being funneled into Ukraine in support of, the Ukrainian fighters. And it makes me wonder, again, when the war is over, what money will you actually need as a country? And it seems to me that a very important element of rebuilding will be to pour money into investment in alternative energy.
Absolutely.
Because that's what's going to make your country much less vulnerable, less at risk. And of course, we're going to be helping the planet at the same time. But you have to ask that question about the rest of Europe as well. Is the pressures of the war and the sort of dependencies that this war is showing up in different countries, do you think that it's going to actually make a change and move other countries as well to become more independent of fossil fuels?
I hope. I cannot think for them. They have to make their own decisions. There are oligarchs of the world. We have our own Ukrainian oligarchs. Some of them are running away because of these bombing and so on. But there are rich people of this world who are who are not trying to develop these alternative energy sources. And I don't know. I hope for them. I hope that they will understand. But usually it's like that. The majority of people don't understand these things. So they can manipulate their minds. They can tell them that because there is no alternative, the costs will rise up, the cost of the food, the cost of these, of services, and they want to put fear into the hearts of people. You know, it's easy to manipulate now through the mass media. But I hope that wisdom will prevail. And sober mind will prevail. That's what I hope.
Some people say that part of the reason Putin is attacking is to gain control over oil and gas fields in Ukraine. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was the beginning, but not just this. He is afraid of the country. There is a freedom of speech, freedom of business, freedom of everything, and it's next to him, and it's an example for young people that it can happen also in Russia. I believe that's the fear that he has. But yes, of course, we have a lot of gas reserves. These new technology, like in America, this condensed gas, we have a lot of it, especially where is war going on, Slaviansk, Donetsk, Luhansk area. And using new technologies, we can provide these gas the whole Europe. And it was the beginning, of course, of the war.
As we close, Tanya, I'm concerned about you. I hear the weariness in your voice, and I hear even the sadness in your voice, even as you struggle to give hope to other people, to hold them up, to keep them going, to find them safe spaces. I'm wondering, what are you doing to stay hopeful, to stay strong, to get through this awful, awful time?
Mm-hmm. You know, I read Bible, and I get encouragement from Psalms. And you know where else I get encouragement? From our kids, from our children. And I see them laughing around and smiling and full of life and joy. And it just gives me hope, you know. And when I talk to my daughter, who now stays in US, and I'm very thankful for those who really gave her a place to live. And it just gives me strength, encouragement, and I can move on. Yes, I'm tired yet for sure. So I need some few days of rest. So I am losing voice also, I'm feeling it, but it's not because I'm sick. It's some, you know, as you say, we're a load. But it's time for this. I have to do that. There will be time for rest, I know.
What are your deepest needs? How can our listeners help you as you help your fellow Ukrainians?
Our deepest need, of course, peace. That's what is our deepest need. End of the war. When the war will end, we need to restore our country, restore our people, restore our nature, restore our land. It will need a lot of investments. And if you hear me, and when the war will end, please come to my country and help to restore it and to develop like this alternative energy here. So that's what we will need. Right now, we need very simple things, even food, because many people don't have, imagine, food to eat. So I got several calls today for food supplies and also psychological support we need to provide for many families, children. So that's current need, and also a place to stay, accommodations, and just pray for us. Pray that we will win this war.
We've been in conversation with Tanya Machabeli, one of the courageous Ukrainians who is resisting Russian aggression by offering shelter and comfort to internally displaced people. You'll find information about how you can directly support her work in the show notes for this episode on the Earth Keepers podcast website. If you appreciate this podcast and want to help us expand its global reach, please show your support by subscribing. Just go to whatever platform you listen to podcasts on and hit the subscribe or follow button for the Earth Keepers podcast. I'm Forrest Inslee, your podcast host. Our executive producer is James Amadon. Our producer is Dave Ulfers. Timothy Connor is our editor, and Forrest Reed is the creator of our original music. Our research assistant is Rochelle Nordman, and Jesselyn Gentry is our social media director. Thank you, friends, for listening, and please join us for our next conversation on the Earth Keepers podcast.